Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very much. And today we welcome along a producer extraordinaire by the name of Trish Wadley. Did I say that right, Trish?
Wadley.
Wadley, thank you. Sorry. Trish Wadley. Trish is a five-time Olivier nominated producer, creating innovative and site-specific work in theatres across London, New York, Greece, and Australia. Following an extensive international career in media as a journalist and director of marketing, she moved into the theatre working at the Bush and Kiln Theatres. She's created Fresh Lines, a regular series promoting new and emerging talent in the UK. She is also a member of SOLT, so SOLT, which stands for Society of London Theatre, and the UK Theatre, and the director of Uncertainty Principle, trustee at the Australia Society, and advanced ambassador for Australia. Most recently, she co-produced FANGIRLS by Yves with Sonia Friedman Productions, A Mirror by Sam Holcroft with Second Half Productions, and Opening Night with Wessex Grove, directed by the great Ivo van Hove. She produced Othello at Riverside Studios, a production which had three actors alternating the roles of Iago during the performance. The Shape of Things by Neil Labute, the Park Theatre starring Amber Anderson and Luke Newton, who you know from Bridgerton. Both were nominated for Best Off-West End Production at the 2024 What's On Stage Awards. And on top of all that, she is also a fellow producer of Prima Facie by the great Susie Miller, which was most recent production in Greece in 2024. And most recently, The Election Monologues, also written by Susie Miller at the Park Theatre, which I was lucky enough to see, hosted by not only Trish, but the great Harry Burton, who has been on the show a few times. Shout out to Harry Burton. Fantastic Harry Burton. What a legend he is. But that's just a small sample of Trish's work. And also look out for her brand new show, How to Fight Loneliness, which is also at the Park from the 16th of April. And for more information on how to get in touch with Trish, contact her website, trishwadleyproductions.com. Link is down below in the description. So without further ado, hello, Trish.
Hi.
How are you?
It's an embarrassing introduction. It makes me feel very old.
Oh, don't be silly. There's so much work in there. It's great.
Yeah. It's been a busy couple of years. I think since COVID, we've really opened up theatre with a bang. You know, I had a classic experience like everybody else where, we were about to preview Clybourne Park. We'd finished rehearsals. The next day was our first preview, and we got the call that all the theatres were shutting down. Oh. And we were able to put that production to bed for 2 years and bring it back 2 years later with this, the same cast, sort of like Groundhog Day, and it was great. And that was 2022, and sort of since then, things have just gone gangbusters for theatre in London. It's, I'm sure you'll agree, it's very, very robust at the moment.
Yeah, it's very, very good. It's very good. And Today Tix is your friend, guys. Anyone in London, that is your best friend when it comes to getting tickets.
Absolutely. We love Today Tix.
And exactly. And a big shout out to the Park Theatre as well. They've got some really nice, the prices for there are significantly more affordable than in London, and you get to see some top theatre as well, which is great, but more on that later. So for you, Trish, where did it come from, the love of the arts, producing, just to be in this business? Where did it come from?
It's a really great question. I have to say probably my mum. I'm from a big family in Australia, and a lot of them are in the arts. My mother in particular was also a journalist like me, and she much more in the classical music world, but she ran orchestras and took youth orchestras around the world, and was that was always very, very present in our household. I'm one of 7 kids. One of my sisters is a film director, another one used to work for the New York Philharmonic, and growing up there was always lots and lots of people coming through our house, always actors and performers, and it was pretty much a revolving door. So I grew up with that atmosphere, and then I went into media, and I guess through my career in media, where I helped set up some television stations and things for Rupert Murdoch, and worked for various newspaper groups and radio groups, I was always interacting with talent in some form or another. And I moved to the UK nearly 30 years ago now, and I was originally in media, and then I went back to America for a few years. And then when I came back the second time, when I had young children, I thought, I need a job that's, more flexible. than the corporate world. And someone invited me to go and meet Josie Rourke at the Bush Theatre. And that was at the stage when the Bush was still a room above the pub, an 88-seat theatre above the pub, and they were wanting to move to take over the old Shepherd's Bush Library. And I met Josie, and she said, look, we need someone to help with the sort of PR and marketing and lobbying the government and raising the money and, all the sort of like commercial side of theatre in many ways. And I said, look, I can do all those things. I'd love to help, but I'm not really a theatre goer. Like, I would go a couple of times a year, to see bigger name theatre. And I didn't, I said, look, I'm not even that into Shakespeare. I'm just not a theatre animal. And she said, it doesn't matter. What I really need is for you to sort of help, move the Bush brand up the road. So I did. I took on the job, and then, you very quickly get sucked in. And obviously I'm seeing theatre every day and just loving the whole very, very democratic industry that it proved to be. It was very welcoming. Nobody minded that you hadn't done your MA in theatre studies or whatever. I feel like theatre is a great world for accepting all kinds of people from all walks of life and all levels of experience. And I was very, very grateful for that introduction to the theatre world. And so that's really what got me started.
Yeah. We'll talk a bit more about your process in just a second, but I mentioned in the intro, you've got a brand new show lined up, which is the Park Theatre, which is How to Fight Loneliness. Obviously, we won't talk about any spoilers or anything today. We want people to go and see the play. But just very quickly, what can people expect from this play? What's it about?
The play packs a real punch. Neil LaBute is known for his dark comedic writing, always delivering surprises. This is a plot where you have no idea where it's going. It touches on the very, very topical subject of assisted dying. As we know, there's an assisted dying bill being debated in Parliament over these last few months. It's something that affects absolutely everybody. So Neil is always very brave. This is a UK premiere. The play's only been on once in a small regional theatre in the US, so this is quite a big deal. Neil's done a lot of rewrites for us through the process with the director Lisa Sperling. It's a three-hander. It focuses on a couple who are faced with a very, very difficult decision, and which is dealing with the end of one of their lives, and they call in a friend.
They call in a friend. What does that friend do? What does they do? What do they do? I'm sure we'll find out. So, Trish, so in terms of like your process as a producer, so you've got a text in front of you, you haven't read it yet. What's like step one for you as a producer when you come to make new work?
Gee, that's a good question. I love relationships, and I think it takes a long time to build up relationships and trust with artists that you like. And so I guess because I'm a journalist myself, I'm always really focused on the writers. So I've developed a lot of relationships with writers I really like, people I know that I can work with who create work that excites me. And I must say I'm much more into plays than I am musicals, and I love a really good narrative. For me, it's got to be a good yarn. I love a really good storyline. So, there's a couple of writers that I work with that do that, Bruce Norris, Neil LaBute. I love Neil's writing. I love Neil's process. He's very, very open and flexible. For example, with this play, I said to him, it's very expensive not to have an interval. Do you think we could, maybe have an interval in this play? And he's expanded the world of the play so that is possible with no detriment to the writing at all. So for me, it has to start with the story. And I guess one thing that I bring as a producer who is not from a theatre background is that I look at everything as a punter. So it's a bit like me reading a newspaper or watching a TV show. So I think who's going to be interested in the story? Who's going to buy a ticket to come and see it? So for me, it starts with the story and then imagining who is in my audience. And once I've got those two things in place, it's about packaging it so that people will want to come and see it. And that might be in the casting, in the creative team, in the director, but it's got to be relevant for me and contemporary. They're probably the most important things.
Yeah, I think you said something you mentioned there about the relationship you have with your audience as well is paramount in a way, because I would imagine you want to have plays which really resonate with audiences and actually have a message behind them to say, these are the times in which we are living in. Or you look back on stuff, you have plays about dark moments in history or great moments in history. You're always talking about stuff which means something to your audience, because I can't tell you how many plays and stuff I've sat through where there is no relationship with
and you don't care.
and
I
you
want
don't
people to
care.
care.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I won't mention any in particular, but there's
Me
been,
neither.
yeah, exactly. I'm sure. I don't know what you mean, but there's yeah, I think this, you sit through something and you just sit there and think, there's a couple of times I've sat there and gone, my God, this is pretentious. My God, this is bad.
Or it's not relevant, or it's not real. And I want to make theatre that sparks a conversation, and we'll get to talk about the election monologues soon. But I want to spark a conversation. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying to sort of take a moral high ground or anything. But good theatre should be chewy enough so that people are talking about it on the tube on the way home. And it is nice to go to the theatre, and some musicals that I go to, I think, oh my God, that was like eating a delicious piece of chocolate cake. It was just a lovely night out. I sat in the theatre, I had entertainment washed over me, and I went home with a smile on my face. I'm really, really happy to go to those sort of musicals as well, or plays. But the ones that I want to produce, I always want to do these post-show discussions. I want people to talk about it. I want to feel that there's some relevance to it. And that can happen in musicals as much as it can happen in plays as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And Shakespeare, like, I'm still not 100% convinced. I am still a bit of a Shakespeare skeptic, which is why I'm encouraging myself to produce more of it, because I want to be able to access it. And one of the reasons I did the Shakespeare was because I didn't find him that accessible. And I thought, well, if I'm not finding it accessible, how is it for those 15-year-old kids doing it on their GCSE? How can we make it more accessible? And I think a lot of people are doing that. The RSC is doing a great job of that, as is the Globe. But I needed to understand it, and I still have a long way to go to understand why he's so relevant and why it's produced so much.
Yeah, no, I resonate completely. I remember reading Romeo and Juliet when I was about 12 or 13. I'm going, I have no idea what these guys are talking about.
Yes.
No, not a clue. Not a clue.
Yes.
And thankfully now as the years go by and you do it again and you restructure it. I've been to drama school where I was taught by a great Shakespearean teacher and stuff. And I feel like if you go and see Shakespeare, I remember going to see Benedict Cumberbatch's Hamlet, and there were so many moments in there. I was like, oh, that's what that line means. Oh,
yes.
That's what he's banging on about. Yeah.
Yes. That's what happened to me in Othello, because I liked Othello as my first Shakespeare to do, because it was a good storyline.
Yes.
It's an easy storyline to explain to someone, and it's linear, unlike Hamlet or some of the others. And then our brilliant director Sinead Rush distilled it in a way. Yes, she complicated it by having this polyphonic approach with Iago, but she was able to distill it in a way so that when you were watching it, you forgot the language. You forgot that you were hearing a difficult, dense language in that, particular rhythm. You were just following the characters in the story. And that's what I want from Shakespeare. If Shakespeare's not delivered well, including some I've seen recently, it just becomes too dense and inaccessible.
Yeah, no, I remember, I think I've talked about this before, but I don't know if you watched the Julius Caesar, because when the Olympics came to London in 2012, the RSC did a big festival where they put all of the plays on, but set it in different countries. And they did an African version of Julius Caesar.
Oh, I didn't see that. No.
Yeah, it's on DVDs. You can get it from RSC stores, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's a brilliant adaptation. And it was directed by the fantastic Gregory Doran. Or Duran, however you say his name, sorry, mate. He gave an interview after Impress Night when he went to London, and he said so many people came up to him and said, "Oh wow, I mean you've done such a great job in changing the language, making it all suitable for us." And he went, "I haven't changed a word. That was all Shakespeare."
Yes.
And they're going, "Really?"
It's almost how you slice and dice it. Like, we've been working on a Hamlet in development with the same creative team for Othello, and we've done 2 rounds of development and 2 presentations with the director, who is actually the head of acting at RADA. So we've got great sort of ready-made student audience at RADA to show our work in progress to. I'm still not there with it, and I'm the producer saying, okay, it's brilliant work, it's beautiful, but sitting there as an audience member, I'm still not getting why. Why do we need to be the fourth Hamlet this year? And the approach, not to give away any spoilers, but the approach that the director is taking is almost a greatest hits approach. Like, let's take the top 10 scenes from Hamlet and present them, not necessarily in different order or anything. And doing a greatest hits of scenes makes sense and feels more accessible. Everyone's there to see To Be or Not to Be, or the big speeches in Richard the Third, or whichever it is. But I think that's a great approach. It's like the first time you're listening to a band, you're introducing someone to a band for the first time. Well, listen to their greatest hits album, and then you get So I think that's a really clever way of introducing someone to a Shakespeare work for the first time.
Yeah. I think on that note, let's talk about your Othello. So you was on at the Riverside Studios, and you had 3 actors alternating the role of Iago, not just one night, one another night, one the next night. It was in the same performance. It was 3 different faces. Yeah, tell me about that. How did you do that?
Moving as one. So, as I've said already, I wasn't, that keen to produce any Shakespeare. And Michael Fox, who's an actor that I've worked with a couple of times he was in a Sam Shepard play called Alive of the Mind that I produced at Southwark. He was in Clybourne Park at the Park Theatre. A lot of you might recognise Michael from Downton Abbey. He's married to Laura Carmichael, who's one of the sisters in Downton Abbey. He also has a fabulous band called Michael and Michelle, with Michelle Dockery, who's also the head sister in Downton Abbey, very well-known actress. Anyway, Michael's an incredibly talented guy. He went to Central School of Drama with Martin's Imhangby, who many of you might know as Will Gondrich from Bridgerton, one of the lead characters in the season coming up. And they were taught by Sinead Rush, the director, who was then at Central School. Now she's at RADA. And when they were at drama school, and I want to say that must be 6 or 7 years ago now, Sinead taught them this polyphonic approach, which means multiple voices, to Shakespeare. And they actually did a version of Othello in their last year at drama school. And it stuck with them. And they're like, we really want to do it again commercially. So they came to me and said, would I be interested? Would I meet Sinead? And all this. And I said, oh my God, I think you've got the wrong person. Like, I am not your person to produce Shakespeare. And they said, no, that's exactly why you're the right person, because it's difficult for you and you want to produce it so it's accessible. And so they took a bit of convincing, and then we started it. And, I had to get my head around that idea. But with the use of really great sound and microphones, and Sinead's brilliance is at how she stages a play. Her direction is incredible, and a lot of movement, and they all use the Chekhov technique. So they're all students of the Michael Chekhov School of Acting, which is a lot about the physicality and how you present the character that way. And I hope I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so Michael as the lead Iago, Orlando James, Jeremy Newmark Jones, the 3 Iagos, they all kind of moved as one, but not sticking together physically on the stage. They'd be in different places, but they all shared the lines. And no one Iago was the mean Iago, and the other one the dumb Iago, and the other one the jealous Iago. Like, they all switched up. So they shared the lines, but it just felt natural. Like you thought, oh, Iago's always like that. So it was trying to highlight the voices in his head, his split personality, what was driving him to be such a wretched foe to this lovely Othello. So Othello was played by Martin's Imhangby. And Martin's is a brilliant stage presence. I mean, he's very, very successful on TV. He did a recent play called Between Riverside and Crazy at Hampstead with Danny Sapani. He's just a brilliant stage presence. He was a fabulous Othello. And just the way this worked was very, very exciting. So it made, the stakes seem higher, and the jeopardy, particularly when it comes to sort of, Desdemona and all this, just even more extreme. So it was an edge of the seat Othello, which I sometimes think Othello can be a little bit sort of like big military, play. This was much more visceral and emotional, and really about these people who were, vying for power and how easily it is to where Chinese whispers can be misinterpreted.
Yeah. So I love that dynamic about how, it's sort of like three different bodies, but they're sharing the same thought pattern in a way. And I don't know if did you see Medea when it was on the Soho place?
Yes, I loved it with Ben Daniels. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Do you remember Ben Daniels he played four characters, didn't he? And he sort of prowled around the stage in slow motion.
That was really impressive because it was gripping, that really added to the stakes, of him, that physical movement, that menacing movement of just continuing. I thought it was a brilliant production.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah. But I can also get an image of sort of Iago, sort of you've got three different bodies, but they all kind of immerse together to form one person. Yeah. But what was the thinking behind having three actors do one part?
I mean, Sinead Sinead Rush, the director, is very academic in her approach, and it has existed before, this polyphonic approach. And I think the thinking was Iago is a very complicated, conflicted character, and it might be better to understand him and appreciate his mental anguish by physically delivering him as a split personality with the three bodies. And also she always felt that Iago she always felt that Othello comes off a little bit second best, even though the play's named after him. Iago is very much the bigger character. So I think by splitting him and breaking him down, Othello's actually able to shine a bit more. And I think she was in a way handing the play back to Othello in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think I remember speaking to someone and they said, the play should be called Iago, not Othello.
Yes.
Because Iago, he has more to do than Othello, right? He has more to say anyway.
Yes.
But Othello has that fantastic speech. It's painful, but it's brilliant. That speech at the end. Wash me in steep. Oh God, what is the line? Hang on, let me think. Wash me in steep down gulfs of liquid fire or something, and it's heartbreaking. But Iago's got that brilliant thing. I don't know if you saw the Rory Kinnear and Adrian Lester.
I did. Yes,
that was magnificent. By the way, I think it's on National Theatre at Home now. Or I could get that wrong. Or I said
but I thought Giles Terrera did a great job as well. And again, I mean, look, listen to how much we're talking about Shakespeare. I've seen the Rory Kinnear, Adrian Lester Othello, the Giles Terrera Othello. For me, the standout of that production was Rose Leslie. And normally Desdemona is just a bit sort of, whatever. And I felt that she really dominated that production.
Yeah.
And so there's something different every time. It's like there are, when Sinead said, let's do it with a Hamlet. And I'm like, really? Does the world need another Hamlet? I mean, you just look at this at the moment. Luke Thallen's up at the RSC doing Hamlet. Giles Terrera is about to do it in Chichester. There's three or four of them. Doesn't seem to be any sort of, disappearing appetite for the great Shakespeare's.
No, I mean he's a classic for a reason. It's brilliant. Yeah, I think I remember specifically the Roy Kinnear one. A fantastic Iago, by the way. He was brilliant.
Yeah,
he's got that. I mean, because you've got Iago, because you've got three different personalities in your case, and he's got that brilliant moment that all Shakespeare sort of villains have, where they're sort of like, put thy money in thy purse, go to farewell, Rodrigo.
Yes.
And being all nice and all that, and then suddenly he turns to the audience and goes, right, let me tell you what's really going to happen.
Yes. And Rory Kinnear's got that lovely, open, soft face, but then he's got the ability just to turn dark. I mean, he can really deliver evil. Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah, I suppose did you have three different emotions for each one? I know because they all shared the emotions.
Well, they shared them really because that was a trap that they didn't want to fall into early. Yeah. It's like, you're the clown, you're the conniving one, you're the this. So, they were all different people at different times. And we also introduced a bit of music into it as well. And and again, that physicality. So at the scene when they're getting Rodrigo drunk, I mean, they were singing old ditties and all this sort of thing, and they were acting as one, sort of, girding him on, and that worked really, really well. So there were at times when they were almost the one person, and then the other times when they were clearly three different voices in his head acting as one.
Yeah.
It is available to stream on Original Theatre. For anyone who would like to see it, you can stream Othello on Original Theatre. You can also stream The Shape of Things.
Yes. So let's jump into that. I mentioned like the intro. This is your second collaboration with Neil.
Yes.
So Neil LaBute, hopefully I said that right.
Yeah.
So tell me about the relationship you have, because I think producers have, you see people working with the same people all the time, which is a good sign that they trust each other. There's a good collaborative process, creative process. So tell me about your sort of working relationship that you have.
The Shape of Things, the idea for doing that 20-year revival actually came from the director, Nikki Allpress. And I said, really, The Shape of Things, hasn't that really dated? And I read it and I was still thinking it's quite dated. It's, the original production on Broadway off Broadway to begin with, Paul Rudd and Rachel Weisz and Gretchen Mol, and I always forget the fourth person. It was, big title. They did it off Broadway, then it went to Broadway, then there was a film made of it, which wasn't great. And it's, university students, and I'm like, surely that's a bit dated. Anyway, I read it twice. And I thought, actually, there's a lot about what he's saying here that is so relevant to 20-somethings today. And I've got two children at university, and in the world that they're in now, where it's all about social media and looks and appearances and who's doing what, and that person seems to be really succeeding. It's all smoke and mirrors, which is what this play is about. So The Shape of Things is about appearances, is about falsehoods, is about smoke and mirrors and judging people and all the rest of it. And I began to see in it was really poignant. I thought, oh my God, this is so relevant today. So the director and I were on the same page about that. We had lots of conversations with Neil. And I had seen Amber Anderson in Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
And I just thought she stole the show. Her role as Diana Mitford, she was amazing. And I just contacted her agent and I said, I'm not sure she's interested in stage, but I'll put her in anything. I think she's brilliant. And then I met Amber and we just began a conversation. I said, look, I've got this play. I think you'd be perfect for the Rachel Weisz role. Would you like to meet the director and all the rest of it? And that's really where it began. And then we really cast around Amber. And, we were lucky enough to get Luke. He hadn't done much stage work at all. I mean, Amber hadn't done anything. It was her stage debut. So normally, I love to give people their stage debuts, but it's always good for them to have other actors in the cast who are absolute stage animals. And they'll all, say that. I'm not sort of saying anything out of school. Like, Amber really appreciated that. But look, Luke was great. I think Kate Blanchett said it the other day. She said something like, theatre's dangerous. You bring all these people together and it's got to work. And if it doesn't work, well, you've got 8 or 10 weeks together and that can just be cringe. And, she's right. It is a big gamble. You don't always know that it's going to come together with the chemistry with everyone, all the rest of it. But so, I really wanted to do The Shape of Things. It then became very important to me that this was ironically, 20 years later, Neil saying the same thing. We didn't change the play. And it was a very, very sharply observed social commentary piece.
Yeah. And of course, so what do you think the play, because you mentioned it, you thought it was a bit dated, but you still feel like it spoke to modern audiences at the moment. So what do you think, without giving too much away, what do you think the message it leaves us with when you leave?
Don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, and everything is not what it appears to be.
No.
And you need more authenticity in your relationships.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. Yeah. It does help. So and then you've got obviously your new one, How to Fight Loneliness and everything. I want to talk about because you've collaborated with some big main production companies over here in London specifically. I mentioned Sonia Friedman Productions, Second Half Productions, and Wessex Grove. What was your working relationship with these guys?
It's a good question. I mean, it was a strategic move for me to co-produce with some major West End producers. I mean, I guess what I say, and I meet a lot of young people all the time, and it's really hard to strike out on your own.
Yeah.
I'm late to this industry, but I've been doing it for 15 years now, so I've got to stop saying I'm new at this, but I still feel like a new producer.
Yeah.
But, I was very, very lucky. A couple of things happened to me along the way to help with my imposter syndrome and with my, sort of, I guess, insecurity at not having studied theatre or coming up through the industry.
Yeah.
And I always tell people about stage one. So stage one is the development arm of the Society of London Theatre. And it was set up specifically to help emerging producers become commercial producers. So people who'd been producing in the subsidised sector to actually sort of move up those levels. And it does that by offering you courses and endorsement. And it's really that endorsement that is so helpful. So they pick half a dozen emerging producers every year, and they give them a stage one bursary. And that bursary helps you fund your first production. And alongside that bursary, you're given a mentor who you can choose yourself, or they'll find one for you. And if you say, I'm a stage one bursary recipient, people will take your call. So it's giving you that anointing. And that happened to me, probably 12 years ago. I'd been producing for a few years. I'd come out of the Bush and the Kiln. I think I was doing my first independent production. And my mentor was Robert Fox, someone who I'd been introduced to by Harry and two other friends. And he'd never mentored anyone before. And I asked him, and I said, well, Harry's asked you, and, these two other friends have asked you. And he said, well, I don't know what it means. And if I don't have to do very much, the answer's yes. And it was amazing for me. I'd have meetings with him. Still to this day, I know I can pick up the phone if I've got a conundrum that, I need advice on. And it was great door openers to be able to say to people, my mentor's Robert Fox. So that was a big leap for me to go from what I felt I was a bit of a pretender, because everyone calls themselves a producer. Oh, I'm a producer. But producers actually make theatre. They don't just write checks. They actually have to make theatre. So that was a big step up for me. And even then, over the next 10 years, yes, I'm busy. I do lots of things, but I'm still producing off West End. And I do want to produce my own West End show at some point. I want to have the idea, take that new writer or old writer or whatever, and take it into the West End, whether it's a transfer from off West End or straight in. So I thought, I'm not going to be able to do that on my own. I'm going to need a partner to do that with. So what I'll do is I'll co-produce with some of the big West End producers so that they can see my style of producing, how I approach things, and hopefully they will love working with me so much that, they'll be my partner on my own West End show. So I took some time out in 2024 to sort of deliberately do that, and I chose West End producers that I already knew a lot about, had already invested in before, and all the rest of it. I really loved the work that Second Half Productions does. They focus on plays. I really like Jeremy Herron as a director. I loved The Sound of a Mirror. It's a clever play, a politically, relevant play. It ticked all those boxes for me in terms of storytelling. And so I asked Second Half, I said, could I co-produce on that? And, it wasn't a big numbers game. It didn't look like it was, had success written all over it. Yes, it had, a relatively known writer, a good director. Johnny Lee Miller's a bit of a name. It's on at Trafalgar Studios. So it was a good, solid production. But for me, it was a topic that really gripped me, and I knew I could sell. So I've got to be able to sell something. And, that's my background in marketing. So I loved the fact that it dealt with, we're losing the word. Censorship. I love the fact that it dealt with censorship. And I did feel that in this increasingly sort of right-wing world that we're living in, that there was a lot of censorship. And so I like that commentary. So that was a great success. I really enjoyed working with them. I love their commitment to strong storytelling. The other one that I did was very different with Wessex Grove. It was opening night, starring Sheridan Smith and directed by Ivo van Hove. I have loved Ivo's work. I really like that European approach to theatre, breaking down lots of rules and delivering things really, really differently. Musicals, I don't really understand that well, but I like the fact that this was based on the Cassavetes film. And, it was a great recipe. I love Sheridan Smith as an actor. I think she's amazing. So for me, it was Sheridan, Ivo, Rufus Wainwright. I've always been a fan of his, the music. And then, based on this Cassavetes film, I like the fact that Cassavetes is an art house director, sort of, filmmaker. So that was very much like, oh, I love all the creative elements of that. Even though it's a musical, I'm going to go for it. I loved the product. Audiences didn't. Critics didn't. The critics did not want to see Sheridan breaking down on stage as an alcoholic actress. That was a bit too close to the life imitating art for them. So I don't know why it didn't resonate, but it was not a great financial success. But I love the show. I still can't get the music out of my head. And it's just as rewarding an experience to be on a show that is struggling than it is on a show that's winning.
Yeah.
And often it really tells you who you want to produce with. It's a bit like that saying you want to be in the trenches with them. And I loved working with Wessex Grove. They have an incredible commitment to artists.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me because my producing comes out of relationships with artists as well. So that was a great experience. And then the reason I did Fangirls with Sonia is, and I'm a huge admirer of Sonia. I think she's incredibly successful, and I'm a feminist, so I love seeing successful women succeed, and I love supporting them because it's very, very easy for people to put women down who are successful.
Sadly so.
I have known Yves Blake, the creator of Fangirls, for many, many years. One of the first things I did, I love promoting Australian talent. I'm Australian, obviously. And when Yves was very, very first exploring Fangirls back in 2016, she was part of a festival of Australian and New Zealand literature and arts that I put on in London. And so I had remembered her from back then and stayed in touch, and then, became Fangirls. And I knew the director, Paige Rattray, as well. So they were doing a development workshop here. I went to it, and I went straight to Sonia afterwards and said, when you take this into the West End or off West End, when you produce it, I'll do anything to be a co-producer. Can I please, I want Yves to get the recognition she deserves. So that was great. We did Lyric Hammersmith, which is near where I live.
Yeah.
And the show was massively enhanced from the production in Sydney with the same director, the same creative team. They did a brilliant job. It has to come back. I mean, I've seen so many musicals in London that are not half as good as this. Fangirls is brilliant. And the message, again, I've got a daughter, the message of empowering girls is incredible.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant, brilliant show.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I was going to ask you about opening night because, as you say, sadly, it didn't get, I think, the reception I think you guys were hoping for. And I think it closed actually earlier than anticipated. But
Yes.
You said there about it's just a reward, just as good as reward as being on something that's working as well as on something that isn't quite being received as much as you want it to.
Yeah.
How is that? So in terms of like the latter, when things aren't working as, and maybe the critics didn't get it, audiences didn't get it. Yeah. How do you sort of like get through that? What's the best way through something if sadly something hasn't been well received?
I think don't panic and think, oh, you've got to change things because the critics are saying this or whatever. You've got to stand by the work. And so if you really believe in the product and really believe in the work, stand by it. But also, if you think that something's really, really obviously wrong, don't be afraid to tweak things and all the rest of it. But I think the most important thing is to stand by the work and support the artists that have to go out there every night on stage and deliver the work and to minimize the noise around them. The thing about opening night is, and I look at things from a marketing viewpoint, what Sheridan was delivering on stage was not a match for the expectations of her core audience.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that would bust down from, Manchester or whatever like that, they were hoping to see Shirley Valentine or Funny Girl or something like that. And then they were faced with a European art house, Sheridan.
Yeah.
Oh, but Shira Haas, she was so amazing in it. I mean, she was worth the price of admission alone as well. So I just think it wasn't in the selling it or whatever. It just wasn't what Sheridan Smith fans were looking for, and it probably was a little bit too tough a musical for musical theatre audiences. And I'm not saying that they need things dumbed down or anything, but I don't know what it was about. Even if we'd positioned it differently, I'm just not sure there's a mass audience for that product. And we probably thought by, it's a bit like you can put all the best ingredients into a cake, but the cake might still flop. And you don't really know why, or there's not enough people who want to try that sort of flopped cake. But I think it's really, really important to protect the artists and stand by your product. And it was a really, really good product. And we still got nominated. And will it come back? I don't know. But I think there's a life for it in different audiences. Maybe it's not the West End. Maybe it's, in Europe or
Yeah. Because, sometimes, I mean, there's a famous example of Les Mis. Obviously it's stupendously successful. It's celebrating over 30 years in London at the moment, and of course around the world. But you look back to those opening night reviews from the Barbican, and they absolutely ripped it apart.
I didn't know that.
They absolutely hated it. I mean, the reviews were absolutely terrible, saying it's too glum. It's just a wasted night in the theatre. You go there to be entertained, and you walk out feeling sad. And they just went, okay, well, we believe in this show. We're going to keep going with it. And thank God they did. I mean, I'm kind of Les Mis now. I mean, I've seen it so many times, but it's just brilliant. But no, it's interesting. You mentioned Evo there actually, and I was very lucky to see his A Little Life. That was on the at the Pinter.
Yes.
A couple of summers ago. And it's something I've talked about on here quite a bit. And I've interviewed some of the cast, actually. I'm very lucky to have talked to Elliot and to Elliot Cohen and Emilio Dorgasing.
Elliot was great, wasn't he? He was so menacing. Yeah.
Oh, it just, we need a part 2 episode with Elliot. Those stage guys. I hope we get that sorted soon. But you mentioned the European way of working. And I remember speaking to Jeff James, who's been his associate director for many years and many projects. And I think I remember this story from, and I could be getting this wrong, so Jeff, if you're watching, sorry, that in A View from the Bridge rehearsals, and went with Mark Strong and people, that he would tell some people, this is Evo, saying to people, okay, why don't you read that line like a lizard? Or read that line like you can't get the words out, like something's stopping you. So just play it like that, and they would just go okay, and just play it like that. And apparently it helped to sort of see different ways of doing it. I mean, I could be getting that wrong, but was that
everyone I know in the cast loved working with him? I mean, sure. I wasn't in the rehearsals or anything, but that they all loved working with him, and that was the thing. Everybody was really happy with their work. Rufus loved his music. Evo loved his play. The actors loved, so the artists were happy. I think I read something in the paper the other day about, the response for the Hollywood stars who weren't getting great reviews, Rami Malek, Sigourney Weaver and all the rest of it. And how do you handle that? And they said the same thing. You just all huddle together and you ignore what's happening outside and you devote yourself to the audiences that are coming to see the show, because they're still playing to packed houses. And that's your commitment. You've got to make sure that audience has the best time. Look, lots of my friends didn't love opening night, but I think a lot of that is about expectations. What you expect Sheridan Smith to deliver, what you expect Ivo Van Ho to deliver. They'd all seen A Little Life. So opening night was not A Little Life. But then I was sitting next to some women from Rome one night, and who were mad Cassavetes fans, and they were in raptures. They're like, this is the most brilliant interpretation of the film we've ever seen. This is just the best thing we've ever seen. They were loving it.
Yeah. And I think, oh, good, you remind me of, there's a great podcast from a company called The Monobox. Sadly, The Monobox is no longer in existence, unfortunately.
I think I supported a fundraiser the Monobox did.
It was led by the great Polly Bennett, who's been a movement director for, oh God, so many things. She was Austin Butler's movement director in Elvis. Yeah, and she did this live broadcast or podcast recording at the Hampstead Theatre. This was back in like 2019, I think. And she had Denise Gough, Jenna Russell, and Derek Jacobi on it. It was something called Speak
Wow.
Share. And one of the most amazing Sunday mornings / afternoons I've ever had. But Denise told this story that when some things don't work, she told a story that she was in the middle of a speech in a play at the Royal Court, and this guy just apparently in the middle of in one of the rows in the stall just got up and just went, no, 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 and just walked out. And she said, and I quote, and I remember thinking, I just love my job. I just love
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it's like I've got a friend who's in the cast of The Years at the moment, and they're just having to deal with nightly faintings, and that's part
really,
of someone in the audience every night apparently faints. I mean, when I saw it at the Almeida, one person fainted. We had to stop the show for 10 minutes. But, that's part of it. And that's drama. That's live theatre.
oh God, I remember going to see a play called, what was it called? 2047, I think. It was a play, I think it was by Duncan Macmillan. It was a play about climate change or something.
Yeah.
And it was like an election performance sort of thing. It's a guy in a chair with a glass of water next to him going, and in 30 years, this will happen, blah, 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 blah. And then the play finished. And then there was a guy in the front row. I don't know to this day if this was part of the show, but this guy just turned around and faced the whole theatre and just delivered this speech about, okay, contact your local MP. Tell them not to vote for illegal fracking. Tell them we need to fix our fossil fuels and make everything better again. And everyone's there going, sorry, is this part of it? I don't know. I don't think it was, but that's one hell of a heckle for a show.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any stories about your shows and the heckles and anything?
I mean, probably what's happened is we have a few audience members who might have wanted to cross the line a bit when you've got a heartthrob in your cast. So we definitely had to look out for fans, massive Bridgerton fans of Luke Friedman. So there was a few people who wanted to sort of reach out and break the fourth wall with Luke, as such. But no, haven't had any sort of really bad heckling or a few gasps. And that sort of thing. But no, I haven't experienced walkouts or heckling, thank goodness.
Okay, that's a good sign then. That's a good sign.
Yes.
Oh mate, it's great. I think Derek Jacobi told a story in that same podcast recording. I think he did a play called The Staircase, and which was about two gay hairdressers.
Right.
And he did it in Ireland in the days of someone called Ian Paisley.
I remember Ian Paisley,
Yeah. And he said within minutes of people realizing what the play was about, up went the seats, and they played to a half empty house, like pretty much every night, or half full house, whatever you want to call it, every night. And you're going, bloody hell. But the fact is they just carried on. We're loving what we're doing. We believe
well, it's like when you go to Edinburgh and there's so many shows and you literally go to some theatres and there's 5 people in the audience.
Oh, yeah. You just got to, just as long as you're happy with what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's all that matters, isn't it?
And also, I'm very much interested in producing theatre that makes it more accessible for people.
Yes.
So the great reward when we did Othello was we had, and I'm always providing tickets for outreach and all the rest of it. I always write that into my budget, that there's a portion of tickets that go to people who could never afford the theatre, and particularly school-age people. And so I partnered with some local charities and local schools for Othello. And one kid said to me, who was doing Othello for the GCSE, said, "Oh, I was dreading going to my classes, my English classes. I didn't understand this text. I had no idea what it was about, and I just hated those classes. But I cannot wait now to go into the first class to talk about Othello, because this has completely changed the way I think about it." And I just thought, that's all I need. I just need one person to say that to me, and it's all worth it.
Yeah, I remember talking to someone on here, Annalie Howling, who's like a therapist and stuff, talking about like dealing with shame, and she said something like, we were talking off air, and she said, look, if we could just help one person from this episode, or at least just one person from the audience, then I think that's a job well done.
Yes.
We helped, even if it's just one person, out of
Yeah.
300 or 700 people.
Well, that's the thing about also, I won't criticize star casting, because if it turns someone on to theatre, so we would have had a lot of first-time theatre goers come to see Luke Newton, because it's when Bridgerton blew up that we haven't
Yeah,
had
sure.
him. And that's a good thing,
Yeah.
and I had Douglas Booth in a play a few years ago, and, we had masses of teenage girls come to that play, but they're seeing the great playwright, Stephen Karam. Patsy Farran was in the play as well, and they're seeing great drama by a great writer, and they may never have come to the theatre otherwise. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, a big shout out to Patsy Farran, by the way. I saw her do Streetcar Named Desire. That was on recently. It came back to London for a bit.
Yes, and now they're going to BAM next week.
Yeah, big shout out to her, man.
She's phenomenal. She's phenomenal.
Oh, that Streetcar was the best one I've seen. I saw the Gillian Anderson one. That was very good. Don't get me wrong, but that one was just insane.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Patsy. You're coming on here one day, darling. We've got plenty.
She's a very nice woman. She's a fabulous actor, and she's a really great person.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to her. Absolutely love to interview her on here. How much time have we got? Okay, cool. So we just got a couple more things I want to talk to you about, Trish. So, in fact, we'll get to Prima Facie a little bit later, but by the same author, Susie Miller, which is actually where I met you. Actually, was at the Park Theatre again. Was something on the election monologues, which Harry Burton directed, and Susie had written these 4 monologues based around the election that was happening at the time, based on the when the thing was happening in America at the time, and it was a really, really interesting, very afternoon. And we talked about different perspectives today, but different perspectives from different walks of life on the current state of the world and what Susie had observed in these 4 characters.
Yeah. And
everything in between. Yeah. So how did you find the election monologues?
I mean, look, Susie Miller is responsible really for me becoming a theatre producer. So she's one of my oldest friends. We're both Australian. And it was when I was actually working at the Bush Theatre, and we just started talking about plays and this and that, and she said, you should be a producer. And I said, oh, no, I'm just helping them with fundraising and marketing and PR and all this. And she goes, no, you should be a producer. Yeah. She said, you are born to be a producer, and I'm going to make you become a producer. So that, so she owes me a lot. I owe her a lot, obviously. But so we've always been very close, and I know all the material that she's working on at any one time. And she told me about the election monologues, which she created with Abigail Gonda. And basically, Abigail had been living in America, and she did a whole lot of interviews with frontline workers at libraries, in schools, and in the medical industry, doctors and nurses, because what was happening in America was the marginalization of so many parts of the population, and also this far right thinking that was then presenting very real moral conundrums to people who are working in the areas of education and healthcare. In a nutshell. Yeah. So Abigail did all this sort of research and shared it with Susie, which she turned into 4 monologues. I think one's a librarian, one's a doctor, one is a teacher, and one is a patient. I think, I can't remember now, a girl who's wanting to have an abortion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the doctor that is helping the patient, who wants to have a termination and has got real medical issues, that doctor all of a sudden realizes that in the particular state that she lives in America, she could be prosecuted. And the librarian is, in a Midwestern town, and all of a sudden there are certain books out of her library that are being banned. And she is a right-wing Republican voter, and she finds herself questioning who she's voting for, because all of a sudden books that she thought were absolutely fine that she's lending out of her library, people are saying should be banned because they're immoral. So, it was, the monologues were very much observations of people who were conflicted due to the political atmosphere at the time. And that was particularly poignant in the lead up to the elections, which is why Abigail and Susie called them the election monologues, and they decided to provide them free on an open platform, open source platform, so that these could be performed in living rooms, libraries, schools, stages, anywhere. Anyone, you didn't even have to be an actor, could just stand up and present these monologues. And they wanted them presented globally, particularly in the lead up to the election in the US, to highlight all the concerns that they had, and a lot of us have about how that society is going. But I think they're relevant to be staged anywhere, anytime. I mean, Australia's going through the same political turmoil, so's the UK, most of Europe. I mean, it doesn't matter when or where they're performed. I think they're human stories that talk about the conflicts that we all face between our professional life and our beliefs and the system under which we're living.
Yeah, it was a really interesting perspective because I didn't know, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know about some of the issues that were being raised at all. And I think that's another bonus of theatre, is that
Yes.
it awakes you to a part of life. You're like, really, is that actually happening? And you're going,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was great. And actually, I think it's a good, obviously we've done a shout out to the Park Theatre already, but these opportunities to see, I think did you call it like a rehearsed reading?
Yes, I mean, basically, this is where, the Park are absolutely fantastic, because I just said to them, look, I need a stage, I need a building, I want to house these, I want to make it free to everyone to come and see. You've got a ready audience that lives locally. We did it at quite sort of short notice. And they were great. So we just put it out on social media, I think, in the Park, to their mailing list. And we probably had 100 people in the audience or something, and it was just great. And that's, I've always been obsessed with the fact that theatres are dark during the day. There are these great places, and it's a crime to me that they're not used more during the day. And a lot of the theatres are fantastic and they offer them up. But yeah, they were very responsive at the Park and straight away said, "Yep, let's do it." But frankly, we should do more election monologues.
Yeah.
Reminding me to.
And also, I think just a little plug in here to say is that I think you mentioned just there, but Susie has waived the copyright.
Yes, it's completely open source. If you go to www.electionmonologues.com, you can access the script, you can access all the background material, you can get in touch with Susie and Abigail. They'd be thrilled to have this continue.
Yeah, so big shout out to those two and the election monologues. I'll put that website in the description below so people can go to that as well. So go and check it out, guys. It's a lovely, lovely piece, or 4 pieces in fact, but it makes up one whole one. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah, and it was a really nice day. I remember Harry getting up on stage and introducing everyone, going, "Welcome today, guys, to a free show as well." Show. Yeah.
Well, also what was nice is we had Danny Arlington as one of the actors, who was the understudy for Jodie Comer for the entire season of Prima Facie. Jodie Comer is such an A student. She never gave up one performance. She never got sick. So poor old Danny only got to do an understudy run, but she's a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
A brilliant actor.
Yeah, I've interviewed Danny on here. She was an absolute delight, honestly. Yeah, brilliant actress. Brilliant. So how much time we got? Okay, cool. So just got a couple more things left for you, Tristan. I know you've got to shoot off in a minute. So I just want a quick shout out to obviously another one of Susie Miller's plays, which I've talked about a lot on here, which of course is Prima Facie, which we've just talked about. Yep, there you go. So you just did a recent production in Greece. How did that go?
It's still going. We're going into year 2.
Oh, wow.
So this
Fantastic.
is Lena Papagaloura. There's some great imagery here. I'm so incredibly proud of this production. There's Lena there as well. So again, Susie's fault. We were in Athens together on holiday, actually. And she said, "Oh, I'd love to do Prima Facie here, the home of theatre." And she knows that I spend quite a lot of time in Athens. She said, "Why don't you do it here?" I was like, "Okay, that's a great idea." So we had the script translated. I found a brilliant co-producer. I already knew a director in Athens who had directed a lot of English plays, translated them to Greek. And so we were sort of off to the races. And then it was about finding the right theatre. And I mean, Greece really is the home of theatre. In Athens, there's probably 250 theatres alone,
Wow.
from 100 seats to 1,000 seats. And then you've got obviously the wonderful amphitheatres of Herodias, Atticus, and Epidaurus, where the festival is, and all the rest of it. So I looked at probably 60 theatres and met, lots and lots of people. And I just held off and held off. I did lots of casting. I met lots of amazing actors. And it took me about maybe nearly 2 years until I felt that, oh my God, this is my actor and this is my theatre. It's just a gut feel thing. But where we are, Theatre Poria, which is very like it's probably like a royal court. It's just the perfect place, with its history, its artistic director, its location. It's just the perfect match for what they call in Greece a monologue. And the way they program theatre in Greece is the monologues play the Monday and Tuesday nights, and then a different play will play the Wednesday to Saturday nights, normally a bigger play with bigger cast or whatever. So we found the incredible, I'm going to show you a picture of her again, Lena Papagaloura. She is very well-known TV and stage actress in Greece. Her grandfather was the Prime Minister of Greece. She's just a brilliant Tessa Ensler. She brings so much to the role. So we opened last October. Susie came over for the opening. We began doing Monday and Tuesday nights. We're now doing Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. The demand has been so high. Fantastic. 6 months before we opened, one of the things that I specialize in when I produce and where my background is handy is I always do a lot of outreach and a lot of partnerships around any show. So when I started in Greece, I contacted the British Council, the British Embassy, the Australian Embassy, the Law Association, all the people that I thought would be interested in the fact that we were doing this. And I ended up partnering with WOW Festival, the great Jude Kelly's WOW Festival, who were coming to Athens for the first time at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. And I went to them and said, oh, you're doing your first WOW Festival. Would you like me to bring the great Susie Miller to talk about, WOW stands for Women of the World. Would you like me to bring Susie Miller as a guest speaker? And we can talk about our forthcoming production of Prima Facie. So we did all of that. So we've remained partners with them. I just did an amazing panel last week for International Women's Day. We're going to do another panel after the show in April. And the Australian embassies held a special evening for us. The British embassies held a special evening for us. So these partnerships are really, really important in, giving the play wider exposure. The best thing I've done, and one of the main reasons I wanted to do Prima Facie in Greece, is there is a very, very big problem with gender-based violence in Greece and gender equity in this very patriarchal society. Right. So a bit like Prima Facie partnered with the Schools Consent Project in London. I partnered with an organisation called Teach Us Consent, and it's basically consent education for young people. It was started by an Australian Greek girl, and it's a big, big organisation in Australia. So I had all her materials translated to Greek, and I partnered with a Greek organisation called Genderhood, because you've got to make sure you've got all the right local relevance and all the rest of it. So as part of our program, and again, open source on the theatre website, is all this consent information aimed at all ages, talking about what consent looks like. And so we've done a lot of work around that. So the current season runs until the 15th of April, and then everyone in Greece kind of breaks for summer, and different product goes into the theatres over the summer. But we'll be coming back again with the same actor in October this year. Brilliant. And then we'll start touring around Greece as well. So the nights that we're not playing in Athens, we'll go to Saloniki and some of the other major areas. And it's incredibly rewarding. I mean, the people that come and see this play, they do not leave the street. They stand in the street and talk for hours after the play. They don't want to leave. The audiences are 70% women. And there's been a lot of press about it, a lot of press. And it's opened up a lot of conversations. And we want to do what Susie's done here, which is really change the law. And we've got in the panel that we've got in April, I met some of the leading women police officers in Greece who actually are doing a program with the Met Office here about how to deal with sexual abuse cases, particularly, tourists and all that sort of thing. So anyway, I could bore you for hours about this, but there's a lot going on behind what's going on stage at Prima Facie at Theatre Poria.
Yeah, it's a brilliant piece, and it's changed the world since Jodie did it. And it's just
it's in 40 countries.
40 now.
40 countries, 40 languages. It's absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's getting the attention it well and truly deserves. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet Susie for a book signing event. I think was it last year? I think it was. Yeah, when she released the novel version of Prima Facie as well. I was lucky enough to meet her for a little brief moment when she signed my copy. So.
Well, everybody must go and see Inter Alia.
Yeah. Well, I've got my ticket. I've got my ticket. Yeah.
Which is opening at the National Theatre, and I can't say much about it, but I have commissioned Susie to write a new play that we've been working on for nearly 2 years now. It's not a legal drama. It's something completely different.
Yeah.
And it will open in Australia in September next year.
Nice.
So watch this space. I'll be able to tell you more about it soon. But it's very, very exciting.
Great. Well, we'll get a return episode in, maybe we can talk some more details about it then.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of the time. I've just got 2 quick questions left for you.
Yes.
Okay, sure. So the last 2 questions for every guest, first time around. So the first one is, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard at the beginning of your career?
I wish someone had said to me, don't have any self-doubt. It's okay to follow your instincts. There are no rules. And, if you think something's really, really good, you'll find an audience for it. Just soldier on and never give up. And things take a really long time. I always felt sorry for people in film, thinking, oh my God, I heard it takes an average 7 years to make a film. At least with theatre, it's like up and going, but it can take a really long time.
Yeah,
so persist. And also never be afraid to pick up the phone. Never call. I love it when people call me. Never be afraid to pick up the phone.
Yeah, that's a good one. Just keep going.
Yes.
Even when you feel stuck, just keep going.
Yes. And no ideas are stupid. Every idea is a good idea.
Yeah, brilliant. And finally today, what would you say was an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never, ever forget?
Oh, we should ask me that before. I feel so put on the spot. Well, I was lucky enough to have fought very, very hard to be a co-producer on Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical.
Yes.
And again, I said, I'm not a musicals person, but Bob Marley was someone I saw live when I was 16 years old. I mean, I'm totally of that age group that was obsessed with Bob Marley. And I went up to Birmingham to see the first iteration of that musical. I just loved it. I rang the producers probably once a month to say, any room, I'll do anything I can, I'll sweep the floors, I'll make the tea, I'll do anything to be a part of this production. And finally, I was, able to come in as a co-producer. It was just the most fantastic experience. And, in some pinch me moments, I, through my various network, was able to bring incredible guests to the show, including Olivia Harrison, George Harrison's widow, and Paul McCartney.
Wow.
And, sat with them through the musical and, said to Sir Paul, look, I know the cast would absolutely love to meet you. Is there any chance, I could bring you backstage? And he said, yes, let's go. So taking, and Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks was with us as well. So taking, Paul McCartney backstage to meet the cast, who were all in awe of, having a Beatle backstage, and Paul telling them stories about how he knew Bob and all the rest of it. That was a complete pinch me moment.
Yeah.
That was a great moment.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic stuff.
In fact, I have to say that only a few weeks later, I took Arsene Wenger backstage
because
I knew all the cast were Arsenal fans. And yes, anyway, so I knew that Arsene Wenger was a Bob Marley fan because he'd actually played one of his songs on Desert Island Discs. Anyway, so it's through my friend David Dean, who's a great supporter of theatre, ex-chairman of Arsenal, be a great person to have on your show, wonderful man.
Sure.
So I said to David, look, I know Arsene's a Bob Marley fan. Would you like to bring him to the show? So he came with Ian Wright, and this was a few weeks after Paul McCartney, which I thought was like the zenith, and all these actors just melted with Arsene Wenger, and there was much more selfie taking with Arsene Wenger than Paul McCartney actually. And they're like, oh, we support some other team, but you're the man, and all the rest of it. Yeah, so that was great fun too.
Wow. I didn't know David Dean was into the theatre. I just thought he was.
Yes, he's a big supporter of theatre, and I think he was a former chairman of Stage One. But he's very, very knowledgeable. He and his wife Barbara come to all my shows. He's a great guy. He really is a big theatre fan.
Brilliant. I shall look him up.
Well, I'm happy to introduce you. He'd be a great person to have on the podcast.
No, I'd love that. We've got it on record now, guys. This is going to happen. So
Well, my next play with Susie is about sport. So David is one of the people who is definitely in my sights for helping with all that sort of background and partnerships.
Brilliant. Well, I'll email you about that. We'll get some David Dean on here. That'd be fantastic. So sport and theatre cross at the same time. Never thought I'd try that. Yeah, we're gonna.
Well, I mean, look, Dear England is a great success. I mean, James Graham, I'm one of his biggest fans. I absolutely love his work, and I think Dear England. I don't follow football, but Dear England, I absolutely loved, because I thought it was a true state of the nation play that really was a great social observation of who we are in society, and that's playwriting at its best.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see that. That was beautiful. It's a beautiful piece, and that's coming back. Actually, they've revived it from the latest Euros, which England ultimately fell short in the final. But God, that was one hell of a journey. But But Trish, I know you've got to shoot off in a moment, but thank you so much for today.
To the Olivier Awards nominees luncheon, which is it's a lovely thing. I'm not nominated, but I'm co-producing a few shows that are, and it's lovely to celebrate. It's something that all the artists come to, and it's a lovely moment to sort of congratulate everyone, because people work hard in this industry. They work so hard, and it's really great to be able to provide some rewards.
Yeah, well, if you need any plus ones in the future, you know where to find me.
You're my man. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. I've really, really enjoyed it.
No, I've loved talking to you, Trish. It's been great. I'll finish the recording, then we'll have a tiny little debrief afterwards. So, but thanks so much. It's been fantastic. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast, and I'll be back very, very soon. And Trish Wadley, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ollie.